Hi everyone, my name is Alberto Nieto and today we're going to be talking about contact tracing, specifically how we can help contact tracing efforts for COVID-19 if you happen to have location history data. So I want to propose a challenge here. I want you to actually pay really close attention to this animation because one of these different individuals, we're going to propose that they've been infected with COVID-19, and as part of a contact tracing team, you are now in charge of determining which other individuals you want to track and potentially include in the contact tracing investigation. So the individual that's infected in this case is person 3, which you'll see labeled as user 3 in this animation. Your goal is to just pay really close attention to when user 3 comes into the map and track every other individual that they've contacted for some period of time. You ready? Okay, so that's the animation, and it was pretty fast, but I hope that some of you have the right answer. Many of you probably saw that user 3 or person 3 contacted user 4 or person 4 for some time near the park, right? So that's our that's our depth 1 contact trace event. Essentially, it's the first level of contact that happened between the entity that we cared about, user 3, and any other entity. However, what makes things a bit more interesting and challenging is that that individual, person 4, went on to contact other people. These are called depth 2 or depth 3 and so on events. Person 4 went on to contact person 1, and they also went on to contact person 5. And some of you may have been able to keep track of that, but you can conceive that this is just a small mock data set. If you're actually working with a lot of data, this can be a pretty challenging task. So what I want to show you today is a tool to help you do this type of process, where you may know someone that has COVID-19 and you want to find other individuals that they may have come into contact with so that you can make sure to keep them safe and be part of a contact tracing effort. The tool is called proximity tracing, and it's a geoprocessing tool in ArcGIS. So I want to show you really quick what it looks like. Right here, we have that mock data set, and we have the tool ready to go. So it's called proximity tracing. I've already filled it out, but I do like to show what it's like to actually enter the parameters in. So the layer is called person tracks. I can drag and drop that into input points. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we're going to name this trace events. So these are the locations where the individual that we're going to track happen to come into some level of contact with other individuals. These are just point locations. Then we're going to specify the ID field for each individual and tell the tool which individual do we care about. So that's user 3. And we're going to start tracking them from the 30th of March, 2020 and onward. We're also going to tell the tool about some criteria for what it means to come into contact. So the first criteria is that we want the tool to check for anyone that came within 6 feet of that individual, and also with respect to time, anyone that came into contact for at least 30 seconds. We're also going to tell the tool that we want to get the tracks for those individuals after that contact event. So here's the parameter to do that. And after you run the tool, it takes a few minutes to run, but I've already prepared a few different outputs. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So by default, you have essentially all the tracks for the people that came into contact and the trace events. So the trace events are these 3 points right over here. You have one trace event between the original user, user 3, and user 4, and that's this one right here. So they came into contact here, and user 4 went on to walk around this perimeter. Then you have other users that became infected or came into contact with user 4. That's this one over here, user 4, who came into contact with user 1, and user 5, who came into contact with user 4 at this point. Once you have all of those outputs, then you can include that data into some type of contact tracing effort, right? The tool essentially plotted all of the individuals across time. Time is the x-axis in this case. The proximity events were those cases where the individuals came into contact. And we also tracked depth 2 or so on events, essentially where people came into contact with the original entity, and those people went on to infect others or come into contact with others. And that's a very useful process whenever you do contact tracing efforts, especially if you have data that supports this type of analysis, because it can be pretty tough, as we found in the beginning, to just try to keep track of everything. So that's a quick view of how GIS analysis can help support a contact tracing effort through location history.